Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing you how I do these cute little Valentine's Day sugar cookies. And to do that, we definitely have to start out with the sugar cookie recipe. I do many different flavors of cookies. I do chocolate, funfetti, of course classic vanilla, and spice. But today we're going to focus on the classic vanilla sugar cookie recipe. I will be showing you the other ones, just not in today's video, so stay tuned for that. And of course, the first thing that you need, I have you zoomed in on this mixer, and this is the most important thing you need because we will be doing a creaming method. You can use an electric mixer, but it's a little tougher to do. So this is by far the best recipe that I have found for sugar cookies. I've toyed with a ton of them over the years, and I have made this one a little bit of my own, and it's definitely the best one I've ever used. So you're going to start out today with half a cup, which is 1 stick of salted butter. Most recipes will call for unsalted, but like I've said in my previous videos, I just really prefer salted. Sorry about my finger caught, by the way. I know my finger looks really strange. I chopped half of it off practically, cutting strawberries at work, so don't mind that creepy blue finger. So you're going to want to turn your mixer on, and your butter definitely needs to be at room temperature, and you just want to get it nice and smooth and worked in there so that it's nice and smooth and silky for all your other ingredients when you add those in. And the next thing you're going to be adding in is 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. And you want to just make sure that gets really nice and mixed in. This recipe will give you about 20 to 22, 24, somewhere around there, about 3-inch sized cookies. Those are typically, the cutters I use are typically around 3.5, 4 inches, and I will get 20 to 24, just depending on the cutter, the size, the shape. So somewhere around there. It'll get you quite a few cookies. You just want to make sure you scrape down your bowl, that you're mixing everything in really well. You don't want anything stuck on there. You're also at this point going to be adding your egg. This recipe calls for just 1 egg. And I will link this recipe down below in my video so that you guys can just have it on paper, you know, instead of trying to write it down as I speak. So you're looking for this really silky, smooth consistency that we have here. And then the next thing that you're going to add to this mixture is 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And this is the creaming method here. So you start with your butter, you add your sugar, your eggs, you're kind of doing your wet ingredients, and then you're going to be adding in your flours, the rest of your dry ingredients. This here is 1/2 cup of sour cream. This is literally the secret ingredient. It's the magic right here. This just keeps your cookies so soft, so smooth. It smells a little like sour cream when you bake them, so don't freak out about that. You will not taste the sour cream, but you do smell it sometimes, so just be ready for that. So now I'm just going to be adding about 1.5 to 2 cups of all-purpose flour. It's kind of dependent on your climate, whether you're wet, whether you're dry, also how wet you want your dough. This is a pretty wet dough, so I do like to add a little bit more. It's good that it's wet because that's part of what keeps the sugar cookies super, super soft, but it can be a little hard to work with. So I like to try to get it to a more pliable consistency because as you can see here, it's really wet. But when you take it to your counter and you add more flour to it, you can just really play with it and get the perfect consistency. I also did add, I forgot to mention, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch in with my flour. That also helps keep the cookies really, really soft. It's a great secret ingredient as well. So this is kind of the consistency you're looking for. I also do not add any baking powder or baking soda because that just helps spread. And I just try to keep the spread down as much as possible. These cookies rise pretty well on their own. They don't need a lot of leavening, and so I do omit those 2 things. So as you can see here, it's pretty still wet at this point. It's not too bad, but it will stick to your rolling pin, so you definitely want to make sure that you put enough flour on your work surface to roll out the dough. Okay, so now I have you up so you can see my work surface. I am going to be taking the dough out and rolling it out into the heart shapes. I'm just doing hearts today, so that's easy. So like I said, a pretty wet dough, so you're definitely going to want a decent amount of flour on your workspace to roll your dough out. And you're going to see just how wet this dough is when I take it out of the bowl. See, it's very, it's quite wet. But that's what kneading is all about. So you're going to take your dough out and you're going to knead it, show it some love, and get to that perfect consistency so you can have that beautiful soft cookie. So I always sprinkle a little dough on top to start the kneading process, and I will just fold in on the sides, the front, the back, kind of all of it just over and over again to just work that flour really into the dough and get it to the nice right consistency. Man, that finger caught is just really throwing me off. I'm sorry if it's throwing you off because it's really throwing me off. But anyway, back to the dough. You just roll it out until you get it to a consistency that you're comfortable with. You'll start feeling if you feel that it's sticky, still too sticky, add some more, keep kneading it. Or if it's, you know, a kind of sticky but workable, that's kind of where I like it, is a little, maybe a little sticky so that I know I haven't over kneaded it, because you can over knead it. But at a place where I can roll it without it sticking to the dough. I mean, to the rolling pin, dough sticking to dough. So this process is, you know, pretty self-explanatory. I try to get them all pretty even, about 1/4 of an inch thick. Maybe a little thinner for the dough, and then, you know, cookie cutting is as easy as it comes, really. So now we're going to take our excess dough off, and we're just going to take these and we're going to put them on a baking sheet. I left my large baking sheets in my parents' house, which is unfortunate, and my Silpats. I like to basically mostly cover my baking sheets with Silpats, but if you don't have a Silpat, parchment paper works just as well. I just prefer the Silpat because it's easier to deal with. But you're just going to place them on your Silpat, and then I immediately will put them in the freezer after I've cut them out and put them on the sheet pan for about 10 to 15 minutes to really set them up, and that will really just reduce the spread and help the cookies keep their perfect shape. And I do that with every single cookie. I just shove them in there for about 10 to 15 minutes and then they go off to the oven. So we're back at the mixer now, and I'm going to be showing you my recipe for royal icing, which is what I decorate my sugar cookies with. You will need your whisk attachment for this, by the way, on your mixer. So the first thing I'm going to take is 1/2 cup of cold water. Make sure it's cold. And then I'm going to take 1/4 cup of meringue powder, and you put it in there. And the goal here is to get just super frothy and bubbly meringue powder water mix to just start out the royal icing. And this is the meringue powder I use. It's the CK. I've also tried a ton of meringue powders, and a lot of them just don't work for the Colorado climate, and a lot of them don't set up that well, and this one for sure is the best that I have ever found. I get it on Amazon. So for this, you want to definitely make sure that you're wiping your bowl down so that you don't have any chunks or anything in there, so that you're really incorporating that meringue powder into your water. And once you get it really incorporated, which will take a couple minutes, then you're going to just put your mixer really high, and you're going to wait until you get lots of frothy little bubbles. That's exactly what you're looking for, is frothy little bubbles. So this is the perfect consistency for you to go ahead and start adding your other ingredients. So I have 4 cups of powdered sugar. I do not sift my powdered sugar, I just don't find it necessary. And I will add in about half of it and just kind of incorporate that into my water and meringue powder mixture. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in my vanilla extract. The best thing about this is that it's not like buttercream. It can look pretty brown at the beginning, but the more you whip it, it's just going to turn back into white, which is honestly a godsend. So you're going to add 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. So I'm just adding the rest of my powdered sugar here and spilling some on the table while I'm at it. Lowering the bowl. This is very smart. It's usually something I do after I figured out that, you know, it's not going well. But hey, what are you gonna do? So once you have all your powdered sugar in your bowl and it's starting to mix in, you're going to turn your mixture up. I do it to the highest setting, honestly. And I just let it go and I let it go and I let it go. And you just keep watching it. I typically will do a 1 consistency. Some people will flood with a thicker, outline with a thicker consistency, and then they flood with a thinner. I do that sometimes. But overall, I am a 1 consistency kind of person, so I just like to get one that will one that will hold on the outside when I'm outlining, but then one that will flow nicely and settle nicely for my flooding as well. So I'm just wiping down my bowl, making sure I'm getting every little last piece of it in there. And when I lower and lift my bowl back up, by the way, just so when you see me doing that, I'm checking my consistency. And consistency is kind of tough because, truthfully, everybody likes a different consistency. So you just kind of have to find what's right for you. I like mine kind of, I would say a little on the thicker side. I actually did this a little thin this day, a little thinner than I typically would. But I like when my royal icing, when I lift it up, a spoon or a spatula, it will ribbon down and fall on itself. And it will leave a mark at first, but it will settle in. That's kind of the best way I can describe the consistency I like. So see, it's falling down and it's leaving a line on itself. But then, after a few seconds, you can see that it's leaving marks, but it will settle in. So that's kind of the consistency that I like to follow. I think it's just the consistency that works best for me. It makes a beautiful, very fluffy, round-topped cookie, and that's really what I look for. And then as your royal icing sits there, it will get bubbles, so the best thing you can do is to let it sit, cover it with a wet paper towel or a lid, and let the bubbles kind of work out of themselves, and that will give you less bubbles to work with while you're flooding your cookies. So I'm just going to show you now how I dye my royal icing. I'm just going to do a little bit. I just don't need a lot for today. These are just sample cookies. So I'm going to take this violet color. This is AmeriColor. They're definitely my favorite gel food colorings. You will need gel food coloring. It just works the best, definitely. The most important thing you can do is dye every batch of your icing by hand. I have tried to mix it in my mixer, and the thing about royal icing is that the more you mix it, it tends to get really watered out and it won't crust. And that's the best thing about royal icing, is you're using it so that you can make beautiful cookies. They will crust over and they will not get ruined. So I'm just kind of showing you on this little batch how I do it. I just put a little bit of color in at a time, and you can mix pretty vigorously with your hand, but you just don't want to use a mixture of any kind. For a really large batch, I'll take, my color, and I will use a spatula, even on colors like red. Red is really hard to get, black is really hard to get, and you're going to want to put a bunch of color in at once and over mix it. Do a little bit at a time, hand mix everything with a spatula, with a spoon. It's just definitely the way to go so you don't ruin your crusting of your royal icing. So here's a finished cookie. So this one's a little more done on the back. This is for people who like them a little crunchier, like my dad. And then I also will show you one that is much more pale on the back, which is how mostly I do it for customers because they like to keep them a little more soft. So I just did a couple of both just to show you. And now I'm going to outline and flood my cookies. I have all of my colors ready in my tipless bags. I use the bags from Truly Mad Plastics. They're my favorite, so they're tipless, so I don't have to use a tip. Sometimes I'll still use a tip for, you know, of course, things like flowers or some of the writing that I do, but I do typically use tipless bags, so they're just much easier. So first I'm just going to outline this heart. It's super simple. I mean, it's just it's like the rosettes. You just kind of have to start doing it and keep practicing and just really, you know, it's a work of art, and you just have to keep practicing and get your piping down. And so you're just going to outline all of your cookies. I usually will outline all of the cookies that I'm doing in the same color, and then I will go back and I will flood them after I'm done outlining all of them. And now I'm going to flood these, and like I said, I'm using the same consistency, so it's really just about filling in that extra space. There's really not a lot to this part, especially on a cookie where it's all flooded the same color. So I'm just going to be filling in these spots with my same consistency icing and just making sure all the little spots are filled and it has an even layer. And this is a cookie scribe, and they're great for doing all the little details, so filling in little spots if you have a thick part here or there, getting rid of an edge that you don't like. They're really an amazing invention, so simple, and I use it literally for everything, for cakes, for cookies, all of it. It's one of my favorite tools for sure. So I didn't show you in the last video, but so I'm showing you here. It's kind of hard to see on the brown one, but I always cut with my seam up. I cut the tip off there, and that creates a much more round. If you cut it just kind of willy-nilly anywhere, it can tend to get like a sharp edge on it. So I do prefer to cut on the seam like I did there, and that creates a really round cut. Now for the rest of these cookies, I am just going to go ahead and put them in fast motion so that you can watch me do them, and I won't bore you with my annoying voice anymore, and you can just enjoy all the decorating.